Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 10th of December, 2020. What a great year. Hope everybody's doing all right, and it's good to be here. Might be a little loud on the volume here. Uh, yeah, just got some late breaking news, personal news. Just tell you a little bit about that in a minute. Let me just get these levels down just a little bit. I hope everybody's doing well. We had kind of a fun week. No, those are all right. Had kind of a fun week last week. This is going to be a open mic night because we are 4 days away from the electors, and there's a lot to talk about there. But just a couple of other pieces of breaking news. And the only reason I'm telling you this, I've always been a little suspicious about people who, immediately, post everything on Facebook. But we talk about just about everything here, so I guess we should probably talk about this a little bit. I got word from my sister that my mom is in hospice, and anybody who's ever had to deal with somebody who is basically in terminal Alzheimer's and dementia knows that this is actually, I don't want to say it's good news, but it's relieving news. She is a tough old bird. She hasn't been on any medications or heroic life support, but she's been losing quite a bit of weight, and it looks like, I think she's probably, my sister says she's just looks like she's getting tired of this and stuff. And everybody in the comment section is sending out their condolences, and thank you very much for all of that. And those of you watching on YouTube, I certainly appreciate it, and I genuinely do. If anyone has ever dealt with this particular kind of a situation, you got to really be careful about your language, because none of these words really apply. It's not a relief. It's not like, wow, I feel great, but it's just a hard thing to explain for somebody who hasn't been there. The last time I really was with my mom was 15 years ago. Last time I saw her was a little over a year ago. But honestly, with this kind of mental deterioration, you find that you spend less and less time with them, and strangely enough, they're still here. And my mom is just so tough. She's never had any kind of medical intervention or any kind of aggressive medication, even, and nothing. She's just a tough old bird. But she just turned 90 in September, and my sister has been carrying this load. She's there, and she's been carrying this for 15 years now. So again, thank you for all the condolences, and I don't know how much longer we will have, but it's probably not going to be too much longer, and I expect I'll be making a quick trip to Florida pretty soon. But for those of you who may be in this situation, maybe you've already gone through it, or maybe you've been listening to me talk about it a little bit over the years. Alzheimer's is kind of like going into a cold pool of water a quarter inch a month. People always say, is it better to rip off a Band-Aid or peel it off slowly? And people getting in cold water, some people just dive right in and get it over with. Other people, go into their toes and get acclimated to that, then get into their ankles and get acclimated to that. And that's kind of what Alzheimer's is. It's kind of like going into a pool of frigid water an inch a month. And so there's never that kind of shock you get when you dive into a pool of cold water. It's not the shock you get when you find that somebody has died unexpectedly, and it's not even like, well, you find out somebody's got 6 weeks to live, or a month, or 2 years. Like I said, it's been 15 years since I can really clearly remember just basically being with my mom when she was my mom. So anyway, it is, let's put it this way. I certainly know she spoke about this well before this disease got to her, and she would not want to be in this situation. She certainly would not want any kind of heroic measures. Of that, the entire family is absolutely certain. And And so, you know, you constantly wonder, well, it's not like did we do anything wrong exactly, but you know, what should we do? What should we have done? And I realize, these are not really decisions for me to make. These are God's decisions. We just do the best we can, and we try to take care of our families. And that's, I think, all anybody could ever ask. My sister has been absolutely monumentally heroic, and heroic in a real sense, because she's not made out of flint. She's an extremely sensitive person, and has had to deal with this firsthand for the longest time. So it will certainly be a much lighter burden. Her life will be a much lighter burden after this happens, which I expect is going to be sometime this week, I would imagine. In any event, thank you so much for your kind words, and not just on this issue, on everything. On everything. The support we get has been always amazing. It's always the thing that keeps me going, and there are times when I get as discouraged as the rest as the rest of you, and I also, this is another tough thing to kind of explain to us, so just come out and say it. I also have this weird sense of responsibility, like I do enough to prevent this country getting into the shape that it's in? Maybe that's a question we should all be asking ourselves. But in any event, all of the kind words mean so much to me, and we've had an enormous number of people step up with one-time donations, and a bunch of new members and all the rest of it. And the kind words that came with that, I haven't had a chance to answer all of them because there's been so many of them. But if you're one of those people watching and have ever sent a note like that, well, I just can't tell you how much it means to me personally, everybody else here, and everybody else on the team. It's a tough thing to watch. And my beautiful wife is just in the next room here. And one of the toughest things about it has been to watch it with her, who it's a very, very uncomfortable, awful feeling to realize again and again and again that my wife, who moved here from Russia, who just got her California ID, by the way, she's gone from a communist country to a more communist country. It's very difficult to watch, and to think to yourself, yeah, maybe I should have gone to Russia. It sounds like a free country. It's really, 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 really hard. But there's stuff to talk about with that, and the court case and all that. I haven't had much news today, I'm sorry to say. But in any event, I'm sure we'll catch up on all that. So a couple of other things to talk about. And I just downloaded one of these. I'm not going to go through a bunch of animations. Some of them I wanted to show last week. I didn't. I did do one thing last night. It took me about 2 hours. And it's an indication of how fast things are going. So I'm just going to play one test animation for you. Yeah, maybe Dave Big Booty, our good friend Dave Big Booty, who's out there keeping the country rolling, said maybe someday we could move to America. He's right. So I'm just gonna roll this one thing. I put this together last night in about 2 hours, and I think it's like on a whole nother level. So you guys can tell me what you think. Then we'll get on with the business and we'll get to questions. So hopefully this will just come in. Yeah, there we go. I'll roll it through a couple times. So it's about 20 seconds. So I'll just let it loop one more time after this, and you guys can all see it full frame. But this is image-based lighting. This thing is being lit by the scene. The actual picture itself is lighting it. I'll run it again because we get this quick flyover, which I like a lot. But the lighting looks great, and the quality of the suits is fantastic. I mean, it's really a whole nother level. Why didn't you run again? I bet if I do this, it'll run again. Son of a bee. All right, I want to run it again. Hang on, I'll bring it in if I have to. You rotten son of a... What if I turn this off? Come on, run. There we go. Yeah, I'm real happy with this. Real happy with this. And so the actual animation process is things like this. So I have an animation of the guy running. I have an animation of the guy walking. Got a bunch of different pre-recorded animations. I've got the means to do motion capture, but I haven't even opened that box yet, to be honest with you. And 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 so what I did was, and I've got a bunch of idols. So I'll run it one more time. However, so what I've got here is, well, first of all, the models flying over are cool. I've got the guy in the foreground. He's just doing a walking animation. He's going to transition to an idle. The guy in the background is doing a different walking animation. I thought it would be natural for him to get too far behind, so I switched him to a run to catch up to the guy. So he's in a run animation, then he goes to an idle as well, and now the two guys just kind of idle here. This suit model is done by a guy who he just appeared 2-3 months ago. He's put out 4 suits in the last 4 weeks, and I mean to hire him because they are absolutely game changers. If you compare them to the other suits I had, which are very Star Citizen kind of suits, I'm going to do it one more time just because I want to see it again. I just love it so much. Last time. I just think that they are a whole order of magnitude more realistic and more believable. All the straps, all the little, attachments, and they're all vibrating and moving, and the lighting is really selling this. So, and people are pointing out that they're carrying scars. I have to tell you, I didn't know that was such a weapon, and I'm ashamed of myself because it is a scar. That's a capital is it's a acronym for something. I'm sure it's related to AR because they look like they're AR chassis. But in any event, I thought they were fictional weapons, but there they are. So yeah, they're cool looking. Anyway, no more of that. But just to let you know that those are coming along, and I'm real proud of that. It took me a couple hours last night, and so now we're at the stage where we're trying to get these assets. Yeah, NASV. The guy who put the suit together took the NASA logo, inverted the A to make it some kind of fictional thing, and apparently it didn't go over well because he said, "Hey, I just an idea. This is on the model, the site where you buy the model," and he offers like alternate textures that don't have that on there. So I'll put some of my own textures on there. I'm going to spend another 60 seconds on this just so you know. When you've done this kind of development on this, just the kind of thinking about this that I've done for the length of time I've done it. We talked about this last time when we were talking. I think Martin Archer had a question about shouldn't you write the script first? And when you develop the background in your head long enough, they do sort of write themselves. So I put him on a beach just because I wanted natural lighting. If I put him in an alien landscape, it's just a lighting test. If I put him in an alien landscape, I'm not going to have any way to know how realistic it is. But if I put him on a beach, I know what people walking on a beach looks like. So Special Operations Forces Combat Assault Rifle. How about that? Anyway, so I was saying how these things write themselves. So this guy who made this model, he's got 4 of them out now. He's got one guy that's actually much more hardcore. He's kind of looks much more like an actual Marine. These guys in the white suit, I have modified that white suit. I don't have it with me, but I'll show it to you next time. To make it more like I took all the weapons off it, basically. Dropped the rifle, dropped the magazines. I wanted, and gave him a clear face visor. And I wanted something that looked like just a regular sort of exploration suit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these guys because I'm telling 3 stories, as I mentioned. I'm telling a naval story with real Marines. I'm telling a homesteader story, and I'm telling an exploration story. And this is just an example of how these things write themselves. And so the guys that you just saw, I'm going to keep more or less the same, and they're just going to be security forces, but they're going to be security forces for the exploration division. So they're not actual, well, they've obviously got military training, but they're not Marines. They're specially trained guys who provide security on exploration missions. And so as an example of it writing itself, I just thought, okay, so these guys they're essentially security. And And then I just had the scene because I've got this other suit, as I say, which looks a lot more hardcore, which would be like a Marine. And this scene just sort of came to me where these two guys who you just saw in this animation, they'll have their helmets off, you'll be able to see their faces, and we'll do the lip sync and the facial animation, all that stuff. They're walking along on a tarmac or something, and then these two Marines are coming the other way, and these two guys in the white suits are about to pass them, and it's, oh God, here we go. And then the two Marines are coming, and one says to the other, "Oh, security guys, Jim, you better stand clear. You don't want to mess with these guys." And as they go walking past him, they say, "Hey, Mike. Hey, Charlie." And then the security guys basically shoot him the bird and basically say, F off. And the younger security guy says, "Why did they call us Mike and Charlie? That's not our names." And the guy says, "It's not our names. It stands for MC." "What's the MC stand for?" And he says, "It stands for Mall Cop." And they both kind of look sour, and they just keep on walking. I figured that was a great dynamic. These guys are dressed like warriors, and they're serious guys, but they're security guys. And generally speaking, the hardcore military tends to look down on mall cops. Mall cops is a term that I've heard that actual warriors use to describe civilians who make an attempt to look like a warrior. And I've had a little mall cop in me myself, and so. It just seemed like a great dynamic. And then you got kind of this inferiority complex that the security guys have, and so on. And then I'm trying to think of some kind of, repartee back or something, When if you guys ever leave your, the shooting range, I'm sure you'll be very dangerous. Something along those lines. But, yeah, it's got a real feel to it. It feels like actual military kind of in show business, we call that a transaction. In acting class, learned a great deal from a very cantankerous guy who was a really great teacher when I was a theater major, and we will get to political questions. But what we learned about acting was basically this: was that any scene between two people or more, you can break down into beats. And each beat has a strategy. And the question is, what is the character strategy for this beat? And if you think about it, you can really see how this makes sense. What does this character want from the other character? Why was this scene written? You can't really apply it so much to real life, but certainly there are moments in real life where it's very clear where somebody wants something and somebody wants something else. That's their strategy. And so we would break a scene down and we'd do a beat analysis, and we would say, what's this character strategy? What do they want? Well, I'm going to use sympathy in order to get this or that, or I'm going to whatever. And so when you break a scene down into strategies, then you get these transactions. It's almost like a tennis match. Like, I want this, so I'm going to say this. Well, I want this, and so I'm going to say this back. And that's kind of how it works. So that's that. I have been out of the news cycle somewhat today, but as we record this, it's 4 days before the electors are supposed to meet and assign their votes. I know that I did an episode. Oh, there's one more thing to talk about before we get to questions. It's business related, BillWhittle.com related. And when Texas filed the lawsuit, which we shot on Tuesday, just 2 days ago as we record this, I thought this was big news. And since then, I don't know how many other states have joined. I want to say it's a total of 29 now. That's going to be a tough thing for the Supreme Court to ignore. And as I mentioned on the Texas show, this is much different than a case in Georgia or a case in Pennsylvania where you're trying to deal with, we found this irregularity or we found that irregularity. You can deal with those in the federal court, in the state courts. And the problem has been, 17 more joined and 20 joined against Texas. Fantastic. Well, now we at least know where the boundaries are going to be during the Civil War. That's fine. Somebody's going to have to adjudicate this. So in any event, So now you can bring the whole thing to the table, and I don't know, I've been mystified by all of this. Pennsylvania's joined the Texas lawsuit and is essentially suing itself, says Bart's Treasures. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so they can. That's great. That's fantastic. That's actually great. So apparently Arizona and Pennsylvania have joined the suit. Is that right? Who can? I gotta tell you, I don't understand this. I do not understand how you. I don't understand how you go against Texas on this. But in any event, so anyway, who knows how it's going to play out? I don't know. But this is a historical issue. This isn't just a private lawsuit being argued in state courts, and people would say, frequently you'd hear like, well, how come the court rejected all of this? Well, the court threw this out. Giuliani made a great argument in front of the Pennsylvania court. They threw it out, and I'm trying to explain to people that the government is the part of the corruption here. This is the issue, is that in these 5 or 6 states, 4, 5, 6 states, however many you want to count them, it's the state that is the perpetrator. That is the suspect. It's the Secretary of State. It's the entire thing. So when you hear things like, well, the Georgia Secretary of State has certified that the Georgia votes are all accurate, it's like, well, what would you expect a guilty party to say? I was very pleased with this last firewall. If you haven't seen it, it's called You Must Be Crazy. And the reason I was pleased with it is because, again, it's one of these things that just doesn't seem to happen as often as it should. All of it, of every single article, Facebook page, YouTube video, all of it that's alleging voter fraud gets sent to the site that says that this has been debunked. And it's been debunked, and here's the debunking, and I know how to look at evidence. I realize I didn't debunk it, but no one has done what I did there. I'm not trying to say I'm alone on this, but whoever looked at who is doing the debunking. And when you find out who Lead Stories is, it's some guy in Belgium in an apartment, some guy in an apartment in Belgium, and a 26-year veteran of CNN are now the absolutely all-seeing, all-knowing, researched, independent, non-biased source of what's true or what's not. My God. So the world that we're in now, folks, is simply this. For conservatives, anyway. I'm sure it's much easier for liberals, as usual. It's for me. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I don't know which one of these two things is harder to believe, but it has to be one or the other. Is it harder to believe that none of this evidence is true, or is it harder to believe that there could be that much corruption? That's the thing that leaves me just gobsmacked, is how much corruption there has to be for this to be happening, And I said there just isn't that much influence in the world. And then, in the fullness of time since we spoke last, we find more and more evidence that China was behind all of this. And my beautiful American wife, who's from Russia, said, "Well, I thought everybody was blaming Russia for all of this." And I said, "Honey, the reason they're blaming Russia." The reason the Democrats are blaming Russia for this is because they know it's China. You can't very well blame China for this. They're in China's pocket. So all of this makes sense. Look, Vladimir Putin's not unhappy about watching the country just come apart like this. So in any event, you throw in China, you throw in Soros, you throw in the Russians, all the rest of it. And this Stalwell thing, is a great example. So you've got this guy who's a junior Democratic Party progressive representative, who has been utterly convinced and blowing the horn as loudly as possible that Donald Trump is colluding with the Russians. And it turns out that he's been sleeping with this Chinese spy. And the intelligence services are saying she's a spy, and he's still sleeping with her, and he's still got this Chinese spy's father and brother apparently are still his Facebook friends. So when you see there it is. Ed Smith got it exact. Oh, our friend got it. He said there are no consequences when the media has your back. There's no consequences. You cannot fail to do evil when you're invisible. And so if it turns out that, if it's no if you've got a U.S. representative who's been sleeping with this hot Chinese spy. See, here's the thing, guys. It is inconceivable to me, inconceivable, that there could be this much corruption, that people would be willing to sell out their country for money. I cannot believe that that is something that somebody can do. It is beyond my comprehension. My wife loves me for this, for my childish kindergarten level of naivete. But there is something kind of charming, if not worrisome about it. I believe it happens, but when I'm confronted with it, I still have a very difficult time saying, no, they couldn't have sold out their country just for money. They couldn't sell out their country for money, just for, really? This many? Yep, absolutely. Absolutely they can. Money or power or whatever, yeah, as Cheryl points out, one or the other, both. And, the way you get there is, I'm not terribly well versed in the way of Chinese espionage, but what they do is they've managed. Everybody's got these faults in various measures and degrees, and I'm sure that the measure of a good spy is, in fact, I think this is probably the primary measure of a good spy, is the ability to determine exactly what the formula for your particular target is. But obviously people want money, and obviously people want power, but you have to give them a fig leaf. You can't just come at somebody like this guy and say, I want you to turn traitor to the United States of America and we'll pay you this much money. So you have to know where that fault line is. And she probably figured out that this guy was either a career womanizer or he was a career nerd or whatever, and figured out how to play to him there. But she had to give him some kind of fig leaf. And the fig leaf has to be something like, this Donald Trump and the conservatives, they're the problem. We're just trying to help protect the country from this. And he knows he's committing treason, but it sounds believable. He wants to believe it. And so there you go. When you can, the reason socialism is so attractive to people who've never lived under it is because it combines two extraordinarily powerful human emotions. One of them is the desire to be seen to be virtuous, and the other one is greed and envy. So three choices. Greed, envy, and the desire to appear virtuous, and a lust. Four critical. But they know how to reach you in such a way that they know how to approach it so that you will do the self-justifying for them. And so, so big deal. So you've got this one guy who's a Democratic representative from, was it Fresno or something? East Bay, imagine. Nancy Pelosi's territory. Well, consider the shock. So you think, okay, so big deal. How hard is it to get one representative? And it turns out in a case like this, not so hard. But then you have to ask yourself, Nancy Pelosi had a Chinese driver, wasn't it Pelosi? Or no, it was Feinstein, who had a Chinese spy driving her around for, 10 years? This is where Bill, and I suspect 100 million other Americans, just kind of hit the wall. Just kind of right here. This is where it's just kind of like, we're inclined to not, we don't know how to get past this. It's inconceivable for people like you and me. It's inconceivable that you would sell out your country and all of the opportunities it's given you, and all of the debt that we owe to our fathers and mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers. It's inconceivable to me that somebody could sell that out for power or money. I just can't believe it. But then the adult part of my brain kicks in and says, oh, no, absolutely. Inconceivable. Thank you, Political Animal 87. It's inconceivable. Never match with a Sicilian. So that's why and as Captain, some interesting new names, Kligosia, the Democrats believe Trump is Hitler, therefore everything's on the table. That's how it works. See, they tell themselves that Trump is Hitler and that we're Nazis. Therefore, anything that they do is justified because, you're just trying to stop Nazism. This is how you justify anything. So, anyway, I don't know what's happened with the court. People have been saying in the comment section, like I said, I was just out of the news cycle all day today, that Roberts is saying he's wants to keep the peace. There is no keeping the peace, John. And if you hadn't been such a freaking worm from the beginning, you wouldn't be talking about keeping the peace. We could have avoided this. But in any event, I don't give a flying damn what John Edwards has to say ever again. John Roberts, sorry. I don't care. You are. So if I guess where I was going with this is, if you've got something that you can get a junior representative on, then what's to say you don't have something you can get the Supreme, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court on, right? I mean, what is it? And by the way, a person who I admire very much should have been the lesson for me. And that person is David Petraeus. Now, Petraeus didn't sell out his country, at least not that I'm aware of. And I had enormous respect for him. And I think Petraeus was railroaded out by the Obama administration. I don't need to get into the details of the Petraeus case, but let me tell you what shocked me to my core about David Petraeus was. It blew my mind that a man of that kind of intellectual quality, physical courage, emotional courage, was texting a journalist, 50, 60 times a day? This woman basically walked in and did his biography, and he completely fell it out. Just completely dropped all of the Petraeus in him, and he just stopped becoming a world figure, and he just simply he did what? Yeah, he texted her 50, 60 times a day. He's completely smitten with her. He can't be smitten with her. He's not a teenager. It's David Petraeus, for God's sakes. He can't be smitten with her. No, that's exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. And now people are pointing out there's a fair amount of evidence that Mattis, who I also had enormous, unbelievable respect for, may have gone down the same road. Who knows? I don't know. I know that here's the strange, I guess, because of this day, but this is it, guys. I should probably codify this and get it out there as soon as possible. Everybody thinks that that you get a diagnosis that you have stage 4 cancer, and everybody looks at that as like, my God, that's the worst news you could possibly get. That's not true. That's the best news you could possibly get, because your stage 4 cancer is there and it's not going anywhere. And the fact that you don't know about it or have chosen not to look at it is just an indication that your stage 4 cancer is going to kill you. Getting a diagnosis of late stage cancer is the best news you can possibly get, because the instant you get that diagnosis is the instant you begin to recover and start to fight back. If you've got a stomach for it, and if you don't, then you don't. But that's how you look at it. And I brought this up, oh my God, 10 years ago now, 8. I remember writing somewhere that the only thing worse than going down into the basement with a flashlight and finding out the foundation of your house is completely eaten through by termites is not going down into the basement with a flashlight and finding out that the foundation of your house is eaten out with termites. It's just that simple, really. You have to if you're going to get this kind of news, better to get it and face it than to not get it until it's too late. So now we're having a conversation in the comments section about if the case gets thrown out that Texas will secede, and if Trump is reelected through the Constitution, then the Democratic states will secede. I don't know how any of that will happen. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just don't know how it would happen. I suppose we're going to find out if it does. If Texas, of all of the secession scenarios, and again, this is not something lighthearted. This is monumental, to say the least. But I'll tell you something. The only one that I think is a possibility, really, or let me rephrase that. The one that would be the lead would clearly be Texas, and the reason it would be Texas is because alone among the states, Texas was its own country, and that's why, if I understand correctly, Texas is the only state in the Union that allows the state flag and the United States flag to fly at the same height. My understanding also, I happen to be a citizen, honorary citizen of Texas. It was a little certificate given to me by Ted Cruz many years ago. My understanding is that up until fairly recently, like 10, 12 years ago, the Texas legislature, which, again, if I understand correctly, meets for 2 weeks every 2 years, while the California legislature meets 48 hours every 24 hours. But my understanding was that whenever the Texas legislature would start a new session, the first item up for discussion, always required, was do we stay in the Union? Do we stay in the United States, yes or no? All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. And then somehow they stopped doing that. We're not gonna. I'm not gonna speculate on that. I'm not alone anymore either. But as I've said before, when I was in Texas last, I want to say 2015, it was just maybe a year before I met Natasha. I was in Texas with a friend for Thanksgiving, and all I could do was walk around saying, "They let you do that? You're allowed to do that? Nobody's going to call the cops. You fired a gun out in your backyard, and there's not going to be police helicopters here? Nope." Oh my God, it's been so long since I lived in America. Yeah, and now there's a spaceport in Texas too. And anyway, I was pleased to hear that the number of states that had joined the Texas case was tremendous. I have to tell you, I am genuinely shocked, although you would think nothing would shock me anymore. I am shocked that states would actually go to court against the Texas suit. But I guess they've got something to. I guess they got something to hide. Anyway, yeah, the Starship launch was great. We'll deal with that next time as a kind of a political day. So one more piece of business to talk about. We'll take some questions. I have to find something to replace the Bill Whittle Now shows, because we're doing 5 of those a week, and we just plain ran out of ideas. You know, there's just so many times you can push that button. There's only so many ways you can talk about the fraud or COVID-19, and it was just there's just nowhere left to go with it. We did 542 episodes. I want to say something like that. I'm going to continue to do the firewalls. We've been averaging one every 10 days or so. I'm going to continue that. But we have to find something to replace that show with, and I am thinking that the answer is a podcast, which I've been talking about for quite a while with Scott behind the scenes. I know there are people out there that are just getting tremendous audiences, and certainly the videos, the firewall videos, aren't doing the business they used to do. A lot of that's due to YouTube. Maybe that'll change if they really get serious about going after these guys, and it looks like they may be. But I think a podcast is probably the answer, and we all need to be honest here. The reason that a podcast is successful and grows an audience is because they're regular and they're consistent. And consistency has not been my strong suit. However, I was able to do a year, solid year, a little over a year of of the NRA show with the NRA News show, and then I did 5-6 months of Hot Mic, and we did those every day at the same time for 6 months. So I can do it, and I've found lately, after the monumental writing I did starting over a year ago now, well over a year and a half ago, with the Apollo 11 thing, and then the Cold War thing, and then the America's Forgotten Heroes, which has been delayed because of all of this nightmare, but should be coming up and opening the first ones in the either late December or early January. So I think that's probably what we're going to do. And then the question is, well, what do we do with it? I'm starting to think that the probably the best thing to do would be to put a page up, a daily page on the members only site, and have some suggestions there, but not be completely limited on them. Not be completely beholden to them. A lot of times, member suggestions are a little more philosophical, and I think for this thing to be successful, it's got to be news-based, at least on some level, And people are saying remake Clavin and Whittle. I can't do that. Andrew Clavin works for Daily Wire now, and frankly, I carried the guy for 5, 6, 7 years, and no, I'd love to do it again, but he's basically employed. He's got a full-time job with this show, so. I suspect what it'll be will be something along the lines of, having maybe members suggest a news topic of the day, and I can look at the news, and maybe we can even evolve it to having maybe calls or something like that. We tried it live, and that's a little dicey too. I think probably the best way to get it consistently on time out the door every day is for it to have some kind of a either afternoon or whatever release date. Our podcasts. Forgive me for asking. You would think that I would know these things by now. Once again, I'm facing childish levels of ignorance about some of these things. Do you think it has to be live? Because frankly, the best way to get it out, if it was a half an hour, 40 minutes or whatever, would be if it were to go up at 6 p.m. every day. Then I could record it anytime, usually during the day. But if them being live is a big deal, then that's about it. Call-in show is an interesting idea. A text-in show, something like that. I can talk with Scott about that. But see, the problem with him is also he's got other commitments with terms of his job and so on. So I'm thinking probably having learned my lesson over the course of 15 years of issuing nothing but disappointments, I suspect the smart play would be to do three times a week, and then if it turns out we're getting that out on time, we could move it up to every day. But it seems to me, don't take calls. Somebody's saying, I think the thing about if it were to be released at 4 p.m. or 6 p.m. Eastern, somewhere around there, that would mean that if I had sometimes there are interviews or other things that come up in the course of the day. If it wasn't live, that means that I could record it somewhere during the day. Ideally, if it was to go out at 4, let's just say for the sake of the argument, 5 p.m. Eastern time. That's 3 Pacific. That would mean I'd have any time from 8 or 9 in the morning until 3 to get it on camera, and then I just simply release it, post it, and up it goes. That would be easier than having it live every morning, because then any kind of a schedule hiccup or something is a problem, and it's got to be on time. That's the biggest problem for me by far. For whatever reason, I was writing the Cold War stuff up until I was writing it up until we just didn't have any more time left. It was supposed to be 10 episodes. They ended up writing 13. And the same thing with the firewalls. I think it's going to take 4 hours. It takes 17, and I've never been able to get over it. And I think a lot of it is, and my beautiful wife Natasha has this exact same problem with her work. And that is, she is such an extraordinary photographer and has become an astonishing painter, just out of the box. Here's some canvases and some paint. She's just amazing. But she knows that, see, I can't even get the time right. 5 p.m. Eastern is 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll figure it out. John, thanks for the help. I'll ask you to help me avoid bumping into furniture. So I think that's really it. And the nice thing about it is we could take news stories and then we could talk about other stuff as well. Things that are just interesting. Things like the Starship launch, for example. That could be fun. But I think there needs to be some news item at the top of the show, and then after that we can just riff, or we can take email questions, or talk about science fiction or culture, whatever the case may be. I'm trying to figure out what the time length of time should be, and I'm kind of thinking half an hour is too short. Certainly an hour would be the top end. Something like 45 minutes, 40, 45, 50 feels like about right. And I would simply just do it from the same desk that we did Bill Whittle Now from. And it would just be me flapping my jaws. The key to this would be having 3 or 4 topics ready to go, and then not getting completely lost on just like we're doing now. Get it out, get to the point of it, and then go. So I suspect Dennis Miller grew weary of talking 3 hours a day to recalcitrant listeners. Yeah. Anytime you can do something in less time, it's always better. So I suspect that we will probably give this a shot starting Monday. We had a lot of people, 3 hours a day. Yeah, we're not doing 3 hours a day. And then if we can build up a regular audience, then we can talk about advertising and that kind of thing as well. But the main thing is, I think maybe 3 days a week is a good start, but I'd like to get it to 5, because we really need to put those missing Bill Whittle Now slots back to work. We just have to. We just have to, and especially since we got a huge increase in the number of members, then immediately dropped 20 shows a month. That's not something we can continue to do. So a lot of people seem to like the idea live, and I'd love to see the comments in YouTube. By the way, the Stratosphere lounges have been really doubled or tripled. I saw one from 2-3 weeks ago. It was 36,000 views. But by far, they're usually 6,000-7,000 views. We were actually starting to make almost serious money from YouTube. Enough to pay the rent and a little extra too. So one of my strategies on this, whether we do it live on Rumble, we do it live on Twitch, whatever, we're not going to do it live. I don't know where we're going to do it. I got a little research to do, but my point is, we will still run it on Facebook. On YouTube. And my attitude towards YouTube is, I want to take their money, and I don't want to give them any. 100 people, 100 people in the lounge. That's great. Hi, everybody. So anyway, that's the plan, is that we'll probably start, and listen, and you're all going to have to help me with this. We're going to have to triangulate on it. People are saying live. I'm not sure that live is going to work, but again, we'll see. I think the thing to do is to just kind of understand that we're just going to fool around with it, and then we'll get it where we want it. And that'll take a little doing, but we'll get it done. So anyway, what I was saying about the writing, all the other writing I did, was I found that the more work I had to do, the more work I was capable of doing. And Yeah, we're not going to have time to edit it. That's not going to be an option. It's not going to be something I can cut down. It's not going to be something I can write. I got to continue to write these firewalls. I want to do one every 10 days. I think that could do it too. So in any event, yeah, and besides, the problem with doing it live, I mean, I do this show live, needless to say, and I'm always looking at the comment stream, and I get a lot of great stuff from the comment stream, but also I get easily distracted by the comment stream. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll start next week, and it will be in rough form, and then we'll just buff it, and then we'll see what we can get. But I do think it's important that the topics become available for members only, because they've been so excellent about the members have been so excellent about sharing this with everybody, and they certainly need something. So I think that's probably how we'll go. We'll probably keep the name of the show the same as well, I suspect. We've tried so many different brands, I don't think there's much to do with it. Grant Stinchfield, I liked him very much. I miss him. He was a fun guy to work with. My favorite moment on because I did the NRA News call-in for a year. And Grant and I and Natasha hung out a little bit when I went to Get Zoe. You bet, man. That's a great idea. So Grant, I really, 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 really like Grant Stinchfield. Very, very much. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. So that particular segment, the NRA News segment, Grant hosted it, and it was like at the top of the hour, and I came on for between the second and third hour, I think, and we did like 7 minutes, something like that, live. They had a lot of fun on that show, and Grant was talking about some teacher, some left-wing teacher, and she was saying this or saying that or something like that. He was making some kind of comment about this teacher, and he said, doesn't sound like she speaks English pretty good. And I said, I think you mean she doesn't speak English pretty well. And I heard the crew in the back of, I could just hear them on the headphones. I just heard the entire control room just break out laughing. Grant, to his enormous credit, broke up laughing, and that was just really fun. So I'm actually really excited about doing this. I really am. So we'll just I'm going to resist the temptation to overpromise and underdeliver. It's coded in my DNA. It's not because I'm a rotten guy. It's just because I'm filled with enthusiasm, and I always get excited about things. And yeah, I can get this done in 2 hours. No, you can't. Okay, 4. No. 8. 16. Now you're getting closer now. Maybe 16, 20. You sure you can't do it in 2? No, you can't. Anyway. I've been doing interviews, by the way. I'm going to go to questions after this. I just finished another interview with that I liked very much with Father Robert McTeague for Station of the Cross Radio. It's an hour interview for Catholic radio, and I did one a couple of weeks ago, and I just recorded one yesterday. And I like him very, 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 very much. He's a very intelligent, extremely modest, very funny guy. And he told me a joke off camera, which I liked very much. A lot. I just thought it was funny. And here's the joke. He said a priest was having a talk with a friend of his who was an atheist and a physicist. And the atheist said to the priest, he said, I don't believe in any of this hocus pocus nonsense. I believe in science. I believe in physics, and I think that religion is just childishness and hooey. And the priest said to him, so what do you do on Sundays? Do you just get together and celebrate Mass? Little physics joke there. I thought that was rather clever. Okay, let's take some questions. People are groaning. They don't appreciate the subtle humor of that. And I replied to him with my favorite joke, which is, of course, the endlessly Dog-eared but never gets old. What do pilots use for birth control? Joke. And the answer, of course, is their personalities. So, all right. So that's exciting. Let's see. Let's see what we got. We'll go to our Facebook page. We'll do some questions. It is 10 after 7. My God, how the time flies. Yeah, so I was, after all of that writing I did, and I thought, my God, they asked me to do, if I wanted to do a history segment 2 years ago, I want to say, at least a year or two before, at least a year, probably 2 years before I did the Apollo What We Saw series. They said, "Do you want to do like history things?" I said, "God, I got to tell you, man, that's just so much writing. I just don't see how I could get it done." Well, it was a lot of writing, but as it turns out, sometimes the more you work, the more you can work. Let's see what we got in our comments section here, because this is it, folks. This time next week, we will have had the electors will have been scheduled to have met. That's all we can say. But the Constitution's pretty specific about this. The Wednesday after the second Tuesday in December, the electors shall meet in Washington to cast their votes. So that's a deadline. And then the Congress voting is to ratify the votes or something on January 6th. That's another deadline. And Inauguration Day, January 20th, is another deadline. Whether or not Trump pulls any of these cards that people are saying, Insurrection Act or airtight evidence that the election was influenced by the Chinese, and there's no question about that either. It's going to get interesting. But I'm at the point where it's like I don't care. Of course I care. But let's just put it this way: I'm not willing to let them steal this one just to keep the peace. And if it turns out that means they're going to riot in the streets and do what they're going to do, then okay. I can't control. I don't get to vote for that team. I can only vote for what my team does. But I'm not going to. We can't just give this one up for the sake of the country or for the sake of peace and quiet. We got to fight to the death for this one, for the sake of the country and for the sake of peace and quiet. Yeah, Americans get the government they deserve, says our friend. And crazy. All right, here we go. YouTube has had enough of my nonsense, Billy, and here's a link to Twitter. What does it say? I don't know if YouTube Insider, striking a balance between openness and responsibility is one of our toughest challenges. You don't have responsibility. You're a carrier. If you have responsibility, then you're not a carrier. You're an editor. And that means screw you. So there's been big talk about shutting down any content that talks about voter fraud. I say bring it on. I say bring it on. I've always been this way. When I first heard about COVID, I told my wife I want to run down to the airport right now and start licking doorknobs because I want to get this thing over with one way or another. And boom. I'm not gonna just wait for this thing to come after me. Let's just see if we're still in business, just for giggles. Hang on one second here. Find out what our status is right now, anyway. But yeah, and you want to say, what are you guys so afraid of? But we all know what they're so afraid of. I have to switch accounts. Hang on. It's always nice to know if you're still, in business. Switch account. Picked up a bunch of subscribers lately. That's lovely. So do we still have a web presence here? And if not, that's fine. You know what? If you're going to do it, do it. If you think that's going to slow us down, meaning me and the rest of the country, you're out of your minds. Every time you try to suppress us more, the more dedicated and the more angry and the more formidable we become. Let's see. Just checking. Yep. Okay. Well, we still appear to be here. Firewall's still up. So, I don't know. I've always been kind of immune to some of the worst of these blowbacks. I don't know why. I certainly don't get the kind of hate mail that I get. Some good hate mail, don't get me wrong, but I don't get the same kind of vitriol that's directed towards guys like Ben Shapiro, for example, or whatever. So anyway, Nelson's Trio's comment was, there's a lot of YouTube talking about, we're just simply going to stop. We're going to take down anything. You take it down, you're making an editorial decision. You say, well, we're responsible. You're not responsible for anything. The electric company is not responsible for what people do with their electricity. If somebody goes murder somebody with an electric carving knife, it's not the fault of Con Edison. But, you know, and besides, I have members. That's why I'm here. That's why we're in business, thanks to you. That's why membership's so important. I don't depend on ad revenues, and I don't, frankly, depend on YouTube or anybody else. And no one can fire me either, except for you guys. So we'll see. Moving on. Thanks, Nelson. Cheryl Toomey, a friend asked me if there was a chance we could plunge into a second civil war. I said, we as a nation have too much common sense and respect for the law than that. Thoughts? Could we have another blue versus gray? Well, we could have a blue versus red. I like the term cold civil war. I really think that's the most likely case. Guys, I got to tell you, the idea of people shooting each other is simply, it's inconceivable to me. Look, I've been wrong about a bunch of things, and I've been wrong about a bunch of things lately. I didn't think California would vote for more of these burning streets, but turns out they did. I didn't think Americans would put up with this totalitarianism on the part of, powdered wig lords like Gavin Newsom, and Americans didn't, but Californians did. So I've been wrong about a lot of things. But cold civil war has a really good ring to it. And as Mobile Moto points out, we've been in a cold civil war since Clinton. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And it's good to wake up. Like I said earlier with the medical diagnosis or the termites in your house. The only thing worse than finding out that you're in a war is being in a war without knowing about it. And so, yeah. Look, it's inconceivable. There's a person down the street from me, a couple doors down the street from me, that for the last 3 or 4 years has had a big resist sign in her front yard. That's the only political sign in my entire neighborhood, by the way, in the entire neighborhood. And maybe this is just me being naive, but the idea of me walking into that house and opening fire on that person is inconceivable. I don't hate that person, and I'm not going to do that. And the idea of them doing it to me is also inconceivable, but I may be a little bit naive when it comes to this because in any event, there it is. But a cold civil war has been going on for quite a while. And the problem is that conservatives just didn't realize it. Or if they did, they didn't want to face it, Again, this is something else that Natasha points out to me, and it's just great having somebody else's insight, and it's heartbreaking for me. But seriously, I mean, you live in Russia, you don't get to be this naive. You're not allowed to be this stupid if you live in Russia. You just can't be. You just can't survive. And she, when this whole thing started to happen with the stolen election, she basically said, "What's the matter with conservatives? You're like kindergarten children. How can you allow this to happen?" And I said in reply, look, a squirrel. Because there is no reply. But that's right. The most precious thing we have is the country, freedom, all of it. Did we guard it? Nah. Did we put ironclad guards against voter fraud in there? Nah. We knew voter fraud was there. We just figured we'd outvote the fraud. Well, we didn't realize that they were going to use a machine that was going to increase the fraud as the tide of the vote increased. You can't outvote the fraud the way that this fraud is set up. The larger the difference in favor of Trump, the more votes get floated to Biden. So it's not going to be a shooting war. And this is why this channel is so important. This is why I've started talking about this channel as being important despite my natural whoa. We went from 100 people to 23 people in the space of 20 seconds. That can't be right. No, that's got to be wrong. I mean, I've just been glancing at this, but we had 103 people. Now we've got 23. Did anybody else notice that? Am I the only person who picked that up? Yeah, well, I'm going to assume that that's some kind of a fluke because that's just not, I don't know. I'm going to refresh that page. It just went like bam. Twitch is not the most honest or ethical. They deboost too, guys. Yeah, well, we're going to go to Rumble then. And if Rumble won't do it, we'll go someplace else. The second I started talking about, the second I started talking about that, boom. I love evidence. I'm going to I'm going to refresh this Twitch page to see what it comes back at. 102. Might have been a glitch, because glitches happen, sometimes people get elected by accident. Anyway, it's back to 102. Might have just been a spasm or something. If you refresh your page, you guys might go back. That's back at 21 again. And, well, I don't know what to say, gangaroos. Cheryl says she's watching gaming streams doing the same thing, so it's probably just some sort of internal thing. Although I would not be the slightest bit surprised at all, nothing, if something just came in and said, boom, yeah, I refreshed it and went back to 22. Now it's at 24. Refresh it again. Can't kill the signal, you miserable swine. 102. 102, I have 102, I'm going 102, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, we're holding it, 102, 102. All right, we're going to stay at 102, and then suddenly 80 of you will suddenly just vaporize or launch into orbit or go out for a sandwich and turn your computers off. Anyway, interesting, but I don't care. So no, there's not. I don't see any shooting war, and I don't want that. And needless to say, I don't want that, and I don't think that's going to happen. What I do think is going to happen is it's not going to be a war. It's going to be a divorce. It's what it's going to be. And, as a person whose parents did get divorced, before your parents get divorced, if you've been through this, or maybe you've been divorced yourself, likely most of you have. But speaking for myself, as a child of parents who got divorced, prior to them getting divorced, I thought the worst thing that could possibly happen would be that they would get divorced. And after they got divorced, I said, this is the best thing that could have happened. Oh my God. This isn't as good as a happy family, but it's the second best thing. There's nothing worse than two people just constantly shouting at each other and just in this pressure, loop. And maybe that's what it takes. And maybe that's what it takes. A lot of times you find people who are just ready to kill each other, and they get divorced, and then they kind of separate, and after time the hatred goes away, and then they start remembering what they liked about each other and then what they loved about each other, and at the very least they can be civil and laugh and joke and so on, and then be civil, or sometimes they remarry. Mobile Moto says Dennis Miller closed his podcast. Is he done? Done? I love Dennis Miller. Yeah, he's going to ground. I don't blame him. He's been doing this forever. I mean, it's a lot of work. In any event, I suspect Cheryl's going to look more like a divorce, and that we're just going to grow further apart politically. The problem is, as with every divorce, who gets what? That's the issue, right? Who gets what? I want the flag. All right, well, I know you want the flag, so I'm going to take the flag. But you don't even like the flag. You hate the flag. You think the flag is a symbol of Nazism. Yeah, but I want to take it anyway. I love the flag. You hate the flag. Why can't I have the flag? You can't have the flag because you want the flag. So there. That's how it works. Okay. But seriously, it's like if you were to have a reasonable judge and ask the property, if you could ask your flag which side I'd rather go to, I can tell you which side the flag would rather go to. And I can tell you which side the celebrities would rather go to, and I can tell you what side the military would rather go to. And I know that if you were to do the division of property, we would get the aircraft carriers and they would get the Oscars, which is a trade I'd be willing to make. I would be willing to make that trade. Guys, the bottom line is we don't know. And this is a month and 4 days now since the election, and so 5 weeks. And And it has been a time of tremendous anxiety because none of us know, even now, what's going to happen. But what we have known is that there are actual deadlines, that things have to happen by a certain point. And one of them is December 14th. That's probably the biggest one. So we're not going to have to wait forever. We're going to have some interesting things happen. Yeah, we get the Constitution. They don't even think, they hate the Constitution, think it's a means of oppression. That's fine. We'll take it. You can have Rolling Stone magazine. That's just pathetic, but they would take it. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, I don't know how else to answer that right now, other than to say I'm utterly convinced that, look, people rioting in the streets, professional protesters, Antifa, those guys, they're violent. They've been violent. And they will continue to be violent in the streets of democratic cities. If they think they can carry that kind of stuff off in Texas suburbs, they're in for a bit of a shock, and that's up for them. But in any event, you know, I don't know what they call this, the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. I'll tell you this. They didn't get away with it. I'm not saying that Joe Biden will not be inaugurated, but I am saying that if he is inaugurated, he will not be president of the United States of America. They did not get away with it. When you've got 100 million people who are convinced that they cheated and 30% of their own party is convinced that they cheated, they didn't get away with it. They can steal the government, but they can't steal the country, and the country knows. And as I've said before, if that's what happens, if that's how it breaks, I'm never going to refer to him as president because he's not the president. In order to be president of the United States, you have to be legally elected. And while people have hated Barack Obama and hated Donald Trump, no one ever really claimed that they were illegitimately elected. They have problems with what they did. They try to get him out of office. They try to impeach him. But nobody ever said that. They would say Trump is not my president, but they never said Trump is not the president. But that's what I'm going with, and that's just the beginning. That's not the end of the argument. That's the beginning of the argument. He's not the president. He's not. There is no president right now. So we will see. Related to this is the idea of, well, what's it going to take, for the blue states to snap out of it? And I have to tell you, I don't know. I was utterly convinced that watching the rioting in the streets and the closing of businesses and all of that would have meant that California would have thrown all these people out on their ears. And maybe we did. See, that's the thing about this kind of thing. And that's why I am so sure that the communist Chinese are all in on this. And that is because the damage that has been done is so enormous that it's just enormous. I have a different way of looking at this, and I mentioned this in the show. I want to say it was the show that got 36,000 views. Barb Gadsden says, whenever I hear that people are moving from California to New York, I go crazy. I go crazy too, and I live in California. I would, if people said you can never leave the state, you're stuck here behind the barbed wire, I'd say, fair enough. Nope, you didn't get out in time, Bill. Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know what to do about this. This is the single great problem, is what to do. There's some evidence that one of the reasons Arizona was closer than it should have been, and we still don't know what happened in Arizona, was because so many Californians moved to Arizona because they'd screwed up California, and then they go to Arizona and vote like Californians. I don't know what to do about this. But I got to tell you, this is the problem. This is the problem, because their philosophy is a ruinous philosophy, and they know it. They know it. I would be perfectly willing to say, if you let me live someplace in America, I won't vote again. Well, you've got this conservative record, you're fine. No exceptions. No exceptions. I need to be quarantined for the rest of my life You're perfectly healthy. In fact, you're a doctor. No, no, you never know. You never know. You can't take chances. Never vote again. Done. Just let me live in America where my rights are protected. And by the way, if you lived in a republic where your rights were protected and every single person had individual ironclad guarantees of their freedom and liberty, then democracy can only screw things up. And that's exactly what we watched. Now, the republic has not been perfect, and there have been changes that have improved the republic and opened up the protections of this republic to people who it should be open to. But if you think about it, if you had a republic that was ironclad protections for your rights to property, your personal rights or personal freedoms, why would you vote? There would be no politics. You wouldn't need politics. You would just need somebody to administer the machine, and the machine is built to a certain size, and it can't get any bigger because that's part of the machine. And then all you can do with democracy is screw it up. And that's basically what we've done. Yeah, and I see these people, and I mentioned this on the Right Angle show, Steve Green's Right Angle show, where they talk about the California woman who was, crying about how unfair it was, and my heart is with her. And I know a lot of restaurants here, and I've seen a number of them go out of business or trying to stay alive. And I do wonder how many of those people, how many Californians that have lost their businesses or are losing their businesses, how many of them voted for Gavin Newsom? I'm genuinely curious. How many of them voted for Gavin Newsom? How many of them voted for Eric Garcetti? It's not like this thing happened 3 days before the election. I want to know, and we don't know. Nobody will know. We can't know what the vote is. If Dominion or Smartmatic is in your state, then you will never know what the results of that state are. But in any event, the way to get people free of socialism is to give it to them, good and hard. And this is where the problem is, you see. If they couldn't leave California, if they had to stay in California and enjoy the socialism that they voted for, then you'd get a change in behavior. But they vote for socialism, they see what it's doing, then they leave. They go someplace that isn't socialist, and they go there because it's capitalist. And the second they get there, they vote like socialists. They screw that place up. It is a virus. It's a contagion, and I don't know how to stop it. One thing about secession, and I think, frankly, honest to God, I think the great single argument for secession is that if you actually had if Texas left the Republic and became the Republic, left the Union, left the United States, became the Republic of Texas again, then Texas could simply say, well, no, you can't come here. You need to apply for residence, and you'll need a passport to visit. That would be a solution. It's the stench. And that may be what it takes, because honest to God, this is the thing. This is not only the thing I can't solve; it's the thing that is the problem. If you had to make people live with the consequences of their bad decisions, they stop making bad decisions. But that's not what happens. They make bad decisions, and then they go someplace else, and then they make more bad decisions in that new place. It's catastrophic. But membership, 23 to 48 in the space of 3 seconds. I don't know what's going on, and I don't care. Twitch, I hope you're listening. You and Facebook and YouTube, all of you, your days are numbered. By the way, there is a way out of all of this tyranny, this digital tyranny, and it's blockchain. And I want to know why somebody is not out there right now making $1 billion, why somebody is not out there making trillions of dollars right this second by offering blockchain-based web services. I don't know why there's nobody out there right now saying we are a blockchain web host, and that no one has the ability to interfere with, censor, modify any of these things, because we can't get to it. I don't know why that's not happening. Most people don't even know what blockchain is, but it's there, and I used to know what it was, and I had a pretty good sense of how it worked, and I've forgotten most of it. People are saying it's the dark web. It's only the dark web because, you know why it's the dark web? I'll tell you why. I just realized. Why is blockchain subterranean? It's subterranean because it's effective. Blockchain technology eliminates the ability for people to see any transaction between two people. And the reason that the only thing that blockchain will get you now is child pornography sites and things of that nature and the ability to deal drugs. The reason that it's not mainstream is because if blockchain becomes mainstream, then that's the end of Google, and that's the end of Facebook, and that's the end of YouTube. It's the end of all of them. So this suits them to keep blockchain in the dark web that's seen by 0.1% of the population. It suits them. But somebody out there's got to realize the technology is morally neutral. The technology doesn't care. And so why isn't somebody out there saying we're going to make a ton of money? We're going to have blockchain Facebook, and that's what we'll call it. We'll call it Basebook, Blacebook, and that's it. And we can't censor you, not because we're golden people. We're humans like everybody else, but we simply can't do it. We can't do it because we don't know what you're getting. That's how blockchain works. So. This is my single great hope, to be honest with you. I thought the internet was my great hope. And then I realized, no, we idiots all went from our own private property and camped out on somebody else's property. And now they're telling us we have to leave. And we're saying, well, we've got our buildings here. We build our buildings. And I put my dry cleaning business right. Yeah, well, you put your dry cleaning business on my property, and I'm telling you now, you have to get out or give me half of your money or whatever. And it's not that the internet was a mistake, Mobomoto. It's that all of us moving to centralized private property like Facebook and YouTube, that was a catastrophic mistake. Back in the day when I had eject.com or BillWhittle.com for that matter, nobody could touch us. And we would get links based on people coming to us regularly. Or we'd get an Instapundit link, an Instalanch. And we need to go back to that. But the problem now is that video hosting is extraordinarily expensive. I mean, it's bankruptcy expensive. For me, Daily Wire is going to be a streaming service, and not just political streaming, but entertainment streaming. And Daily Wire is the most brilliantly run company I've ever seen. I watched the whole thing happen from the outside. Jeremy Boring was my best friend for years and years and years. We started Declaration Entertainment together, and we signed a lease on one edit bay in 2010 or 11, something like that. And that was the birth of what became Daily Wire. And he is a brilliant businessman, and I am not. But nevertheless, they have the money to stream their own stuff. That's just not an option for us. We don't bring in enough money to cover the web hosting. And besides, I'm in the mood now, and I think this is what part of and I've said this before, you're going to hear me say this so often, you might as well just get used to it. It's going to be like the arcade of the next 3 years. But I will never, ever use the term the resistance again, despite the fact that we had the common sense resistance 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. Resistance is a weak term. It's a passive term. I'll cheat you on your wine bill. We're not going to be doing a resistance. This is going to be a counter-revolution. This is going to be open, outright warfare to recover this country. Cultural warfare is certainly how I think it's going to go. But, people, why does everything go so far left? How come everything goes left? It's like, no, you got it wrong. Leftism is the default condition of mankind. There's always people that want to rule over people, and there's always most people want to be ruled over. You don't have to like it. It's true. It's true. The reason they get away with it is because there's a genetic defect in the human nature that tells people that many people want to tell other people what to do, and those people would have been tarred and feathered out of the gene pool millennia ago if it weren't for the fact that there are huge numbers of people that want to be told what to do, and therein lies your problem. Escape from freedom, that's what they want. They don't want the responsibility. I had a good friend, and he may be watching now. He's still a good friend. I haven't talked to him much lately, but Steve, if you're watching this, okay. And when I was in college, he was in the Air Force, and he loved the fact that in the military, he didn't have to decide what he was going to wear. He didn't have to decide where he was going to eat. He didn't have to decide what he was going to do. Didn't have to worry about his paycheck. He loved it. Loved it. And many people do. I'm not saying that there are people that join the military to protect and defend freedom, and he's one of them. But there are people that that really like that. And one of the things that has happened with many immigrants, especially immigrants from Russia or other former communist countries, this was true in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, not so much true after the fall of the Soviet Union. But there were many Russian dissidents who came here before the fall of the Soviet Union and came here for the freedom and got here and saw the freedom and all the prosperity and all the wealth and the supermarkets and lines for shriveled potatoes back home, and they get here and they see these supermarkets. Oh my God. And then they realize that they have to get up and work, and if they don't work, they're going to get thrown out of their apartment, and they have to pay their own health care bills, and they have to find a way to buy a car and pay insurance on that car, and you're responsible for everything, and you've got so many things that you have to do, and it's on you. And significant numbers of them just plain went home. They couldn't take it. They would rather go back to a world that provided them with the peace of mind of knowing that no matter how awful things were, it was going to be guaranteed to be there tomorrow. And this is why there are more people working for companies than there are people running companies, because I've been an employee for my entire life until 2014. And it is a much, 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 much tougher proposition to sign the front of a check than to sign the back of one. Much tougher. And given my lack of skill in this area, it's only because of the kindness and generosity of so many of you that we're still here, because honestly, business is foreign to me. Although I must say that lately especially, my opinions and my attitudes and my behaviors are changing dramatically. Finally beginning to understand things I should have understood when I was 20. But in any event, thanks again for all of the support. We'll do a few more and then we'll call it a night. It's 7:45, so we'll do at least 2 hours. So here we go. Steve Young says Chuck Yeager has flown west. He sure did, Steve. I did a show specifically on Yeager, did an extra right angle on that, so if you don't mind, I'll skip that one. Pretty much everything I thought I needed to say about Yeager, I've got in that show. Eric Blake, hey Bill, there are 3 things I want to point to for this question: Matthew McConaughey's, Joe Rogan, and Russell Brand's interviews. How the Marvel stars en masse, including Mark Ruffalo, publicly supported and defended Chris Pratt amid all the attacks on him from the SJW woke scolds, the big, beautiful Beverly Hills support for Trump. Personally, I'd say they're all beautiful moments of clarity and hope in Hollywood. Dare we hope that maybe, just maybe, people in the industry are starting to wake up to the evils of the new blacklist after all? ? And ultimately, are there more of the closeted conservatives in the industry than we all care to assume? The answer to the second part is the only one I can definitely answer. And yes, there are far more conservatives in Hollywood than you would assume. And 5 years ago, I knew every single one of them by name because I had been the guy who had inducted virtually all of them into the secret society that I'm still not at liberty to talk about. But I don't know how many of those members meetings that I hosted, but couldn't have been less than 40 or 50, I don't think. So I knew easily 1,000, closer to 2,000. And this is the thing that the left consistently is surprised by. When you intimidate people to the degree where you get everybody agreeing with you in public through intimidation and coercion, they're shocked, I say, when they find out that the people don't actually believe what they say. The social pressure it's not social pressure. It's stronger than that. If you Well, first of all, if I tried to get a job as an editor in this town, I simply would never get hired ever, no matter what my resume. But take somebody who's been working in the business forever. And I heard this story every 2 weeks. I heard it every 2 weeks for 5 years. I've heard it from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people without exaggeration. That people in show business would sit there in the makeup room, or they would sit on the set or the stage or whatever, and they'd hear everybody talking about how that Bush is a Hitler, and just all the time. And they had to, right, Jim? And they go, yeah, absolutely. I've heard it from hairdressers. I've heard it from everybody. I've heard it from everybody that they have to be quiet and they have to, agree, or else they're going to get fired. And it's easy to say, well, you should be brave and speak up. But how many of you out there are willing to turn off your own electricity for a cause? Hey, don't go just from X yet. Thanks for the content, Bill. Heading to Air Force boot camp in January. Keep up the good work for us. Just for Mex, I don't recognize the name, but by God bless you, and you have a wonderful time out there, and I'm very, very, very proud of you. Very, very proud. I know all of us here are proud of you. Very grateful, and comments from people in the military always have a special place in my heart. So you be careful out there, and don't forget this either, by the way. The military is the defender of American freedom, and I don't mean through the point of a gun or through bombs dropped out of airplanes. You are the moral core of the country. You're the only large group of people left that understand what this country is about. You could disarm the military. You could take every single weapon away from the military, and they still would be invaluable to this country, because they are the repository of honor and courage and intelligence and commitment, sacrifice, all of those things. Bless you, and have fun up there, and stay in touch, and let us know how you're doing. And tell all the rest of the people you meet up there too, that no matter what they may hear on TV and no matter what people may say, the huge majority of the country has their backs, and has your backs, and we're not only standing behind you, we're praying for you, and you get out there and go kick some ass, and that'll get you to heaven for sure. All right, so let's see. So there are a lot of closeted conservatives out here, Eric. Is it going to change the industry? No. If people were held responsible for their bad decisions and forced to live in California and stay here, the last people to be converted, and I don't think they would ever be converted, the last ones to go would be the communist true believers, and the second last ones to go would be the Hollywood limousine millionaires. Because in order to understand why so many celebrities are so woke and so outspoken, you have to understand the actor psychology, which is something I do because I've been around them my whole life. I'm not a very good actor. I'm a good public speaker, and I have enough acting ability to toss out a line like every now and then, like I have to step out of frame so I can throw up now. But I'm not a great actor by any means. But I understand how they work and how they think, and the reason that celebrities are as vocal and as liberal as they are is because actors have two qualities that you really have to understand. One of them is they have an aching hole in the middle of their personalities where most of you have a soul. And that hole was never filled through correct parenting or whatever. And that means that they have to, that approval, applause for them. And I've got a lot of this in me myself. I'm not trying to elevate myself above them because I've certainly got part of this myself, although I'm struggling hard against it. But actors have to have constant approval. They have to be adored and loved. They have to be in the center of attention. They have to be in the spotlight. And people like this are people with addictive personalities. They don't generate their own happiness. They don't generate their own self-respect, their own self-worth. It comes entirely from the outside, and so they chase it with a burning passion. And so they need the applause. They need the... why do you think that we have kudos season out here? Kudos... for my beautiful wife means congratulations. Why do we not just why first of all, why do we have the Academy Awards? But much more tellingly, Why do we have the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards and the Writers Guild Awards and the Directors Guild Awards and the 10,000 award shows? Why? Because applause is the energy source that powers this whole thing. That's air. It's not even water for them. It's air. They can't live without the approval, and they want the approval of the masses, and they'd rather have the approval of the celebrities. Celebrities would rather have the approval of other celebrities. Now, part of that is the kind of thing that is relatively novel. I know that when I hear compliments from, I don't want to drop names or anything, but let's just say off the top of my head, Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or any of the other people who've told me what wonderful, magnificent guy I am. But when you hear things from people who are your peers and people who are top of their business, it means an awful lot to so there's nothing really wrong with that. But to seek it out, that's the issue. To just seek it out and to need it. So the two things about celebrities you need to understand is, number one, they need approval and love, and that is their oxygen. They can't live without it. And the second thing you need to know about actors is that they all, every single one of them, carry enormous inferiority complexes with them. Enormous inferiority complexes with them. With the exception of people like Chris Pratt, who is clearly an extremely talented actor who, without question, had a decent childhood and has got a soul, and he does it because he's good at it and he loves it. He's not in that category, but virtually all of the actors that I know became actors because they don't think that they themselves are very interesting, and the idea of stepping into someone who is interesting is extraordinarily appealing to them. And as a general rule, Gary Sinise is an enormous patriot, and Gary Sinise has a tremendous amount of character. But I'm speaking in generalities here. All you need to know about an actor is this. If you really want to get a picture of an actor, if you really want to get the actor mentality in your mind, what you need to do is you need to think of somebody really attractive and fashionably dressed, sitting at Starbucks at a table, reading War and Peace, and wearing glasses that have no prescription. Did we all get that, what I'm saying there? Somebody reading War and Peace at Starbucks, looking fabulous, wearing glasses that have no corrective ability. In other words, they're not sunglasses, and they don't need them. They're just what smart people wear. It's a prop. It's like everything else in their world. It's a prop or it's a costume accessory. And I have seen this with my own eyes many times, variations of this. You will see actors in Starbucks, and the entire performance, because that's what it is, it's a performance. Everything they do is a performance. The entire performance is this. Well, I have a few moments of spare time from my busy life as a leading movie star, and God only knows what other projects I'm just about to have greenlit, but I do need a break, so I'll go and just step out for a brief moment. I always look like this. This is how I look around the house, the perfect makeup and the $4,000 worth of clothes and $700 shoes and so on, and the $3,000 purse. I'm just going to step out of the house just for a quick moment, just to take a quick break from all of the researching that I have to do as an actor. And I'll go down and just do a little light reading at Starbucks just for half an hour, just to clear the head out. And they prepare for this all day. And they get themselves out there, go to Starbucks, they sit there. A little light reading would be nice. I think I'll just catch up on my Tolstoy. Better put my glasses on because I do so much reading. And as people pointed out, the book is upside down because it doesn't matter. The book's a prop. If you can get that image in your head, then you understand all of it. Not just Hollywood, but you can really also understand most intellectuals, most college professors, all of that. If you get that picture, and it's not a hard picture to get, if you can get that in your head, then you're there. Wearing glasses that you don't need, attempting to look like you just stepped out when you probably spent 2 hours preparing yourself, carrying a book that you've heard smart people read, you've never read a word of, and you're not capable of reading. You're not capable of reading War and Peace. You don't. When I say you're not capable of reading it, I'm not saying they can't read, although many of them are pretty near that. The typical Hollywood actor cannot read War and Peace. It's not that they can't do it. They can't do it. They have not got the concentration for it. They cannot put. It's too hard for them. They can't do it. Cheryl points out that Peter Weller has a PhD in art history. He was a professor at Syracuse University. Showed up in a video I was using to teach ancient Roman aqueducts. Peter Weller is a very smart guy. James Wood is a very, very smart guy. And Dolph Lundgren, believe it or not, apparently is a 160, 170 IQ. But James Woods is starting to blaze across the sky in Twitter. He sort of emerged right as the secret society was kind of coming to an end, kind of winding down. But yeah, and that says something too, you know. The real bright actors, you don't hear them talking about liberal politics at all. Which gets me back to my Island 120 theory, but we're not going to bring that up now. We'll do one more. How about that? Stephen Slutwinski. Hi, Bill. Thank you for what you do. You're welcome. Thank you for the support. I was hoping to get your view on the subject of chemtrails being a pilot. Is it me just noticing a drastic reduction of chemtrails in the past 4 years? It seems that there was so much more activity during the Obama-Biden administration. Hey, Steve. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about chemtrails briefly. I once sat down with a person who was a very big progressive and believed in all kinds of things, and I'm certainly not accusing you of being this, because let me back up and preface what I'm about to say by saying this. It has been an enormous source of satisfaction to me to have gotten and to continue to receive even today emails from people saying that they had been utterly convinced that the moon landing was a conspiracy until they saw the Apollo 11 What We Saw series, and now they're completely convinced that it really happened. And when I get letters like that, I say, well, thank you for sending the letter. I say, and I suspect the reason that you've changed your mind is because you always thought that the moon landing, that men landing on the moon consisted of Apollo 11. We start from nothing. We put guys in a capsule, send them to the moon, they land, they take off, boom, and it seems inconceivable. But I'll bet you anything that once you hear about Apollo 10, your ability to believe in Apollo 11 goes way up. And then if you hear about Apollo 9 and Apollo 8, Apollo 7, and then all the Gemini missions, you realize that there's nothing about the moon landing that is a leap above what happened before there. And they said, no, that's exactly right. We didn't know any of it. We just thought Apollo 11 happened. They got in a rocket, flew to the moon and landed. It seemed easier to fake it than do it. But once you point out that, no, there's no break between putting a chimp in a redstone and launching him up for 15 minutes and then there's no break between that and Neil Armstrong standing on the moon. It's just incremental increases. And that's how everything is done. It's how computers advance, how everything, it's incremental improvements. So anyway, I just wanted to say that before saying this. The entire chemtrails thing has not and never has had any basis, in fact, in terms of what the chemtrail theory is. There is no question that jetliners produce a different signature occasionally. And when I say occasionally, let's not forget that prior to the pandemic, there were 40 or 50,000 flights a day in this country. So no matter how many contrails you may see on the course of a given day, virtually everything up there is invisible. But the reason that people have come to believe the chemtrail thing is because they grew to distrust their government. And I don't blame you for doing that. I don't blame you at all for distrusting your government. But if you think it through, you'll realize that it just doesn't hold water. It holds water if you count 2 or 3 points and then you stop counting. But let's just kind of talk this through. So I'll talk it through to you the way I talked it through to this liberal person who believed in everything, including chemtrails. So the first question I would have to ask is, if this theory is true, the best way to deal with any kind of a theory is to assume it's true. And then everybody always thinks the thing to do is to try and disprove it. But that's actually not the case. The better way is to try and prove it. If somebody comes at you with a theory that seems believable, pretend. All right, if they faked the moon landing, what would they have to do to make it? Well, in order to fake the moon landing, they'd have to build a studio that's a vacuum, and that's harder than going to the moon. So let's say that there was in fact and is in fact an underground conspiracy to poison or influence Americans by spraying chemicals in the air, and so the whole let's just assume the chemtrail thing is real. What would that entail? So the first question is, do they do this with special jets, or do they do this with commercial jetliners? If they do this with special jets, you've got a problem, because I've been in airplanes, and so have you, and looked out the window and seen other planes generating contrails, going this way, going that way. And we can see that they all Delta or American or so on. We've never seen unmarked jets up there producing contrails. We've seen contrails in the sky coming from airliners. And so the idea that there are special chemtrail jets, or at least look different than airliners, doesn't hold water, because we've seen chemtrails coming from so-called chemtrails, what people call chemtrails. We've seen them coming from commercial airliners. You can go up and do that any day. Before the pandemic, you could do it any day anyway. So we know that's not the case. So then it has to be commercial jetliners. Now, if it's commercial jetliners, you have to ask a second either-or logical question. And the logical question there is, do they have special government pilots flying Delta flights? Or are they civilian pilots? Well, if there were pilots who were specially trained by the military flying commercial jetliners, pumping out these chemicals, then certainly the other pilots around would be aware of this, because there's nothing that other pilots pay attention to more than seniority and their place in the pecking order. This is their religion. Seniority determines what you fly, how much you make, and all of it. So if all of a sudden people appear and start flying jets that they've never seen before, that's not something you're going to get away with. You can't just have people just come in and start taking, Delta 1486 aloft, because all the pilots know every other pilot, and they're constantly aware of where every single one of them is on the seniority. They know where they are to the day and the hour. So that would mean that it has to be done by civilian pilots. Now, it doesn't have to be done by all of them, but it has to be done by some of them. So now you start to get into the real issues. So if this theory is true, and there's enough of these things to count for what we see on a good day, when atmospheric conditions are most likely to form these heavy contrails, then we got to figure out that, okay, so there must be at any given day 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 pilots involved with this over the course of years. None of them have come through with actual evidence, and actual evidence would mean things like photographs of the actual nozzles that are dispersing these chemicals, photographs of the nozzles themselves, any sample, the liquid sample before it gets aerosolized. Nobody's come up with this. When you ask people that, they say, well, they're paying you a lot of money. They're paying the pilots involved a lot of money, and if they rat, they'll kill them. Okay, no deathbed conversions, no wills, nobody saying, okay, well, I sure don't want to be killed, but when I die, I'm going to reveal all, and here's a sample of the chemicals, and it was taken from flight, United 2219 on the 14th of September 2017, and we dumped this many gallons over this location, and I was the pilot. No, nothing. And then you have to include all of the ground personnel, because if these things are spraying chemicals and somebody has to load them, and you're not talking about a little puff, you're talking about these things going transcontinental with this stuff. So somebody has to put this poison into gasoline, and somebody has to put the nozzles, and somebody has to clean them, and somebody has to take it out, and it all has to be done in top secret. And whatever it is, either has to go into the jet fuel or has to be in a tank separate from the jet fuel, which means that airplane has to be specifically modified and on and on and on and on and on. And then you have to start asking even bigger questions. And the bigger questions are things like this. If you're saying that people are spraying poison over the country, or mind control poison over the country, and that pilots are in on it, well, pilots live in the country too. And so do their families. So do their kids. And so you've got pilots who are out there, needless to say, virtually all of them have family, and the kids aren't all at home, and they don't say, don't go outside today or ever. They've got kids in school and things that they love and friends that they love, and so the idea is that we're going to fly over our own country and gas our own people. When I say gas them, I don't mean kill them. I mean whatever the chemtrails are alleged to do, including myself, by the way, because I'm not flying but a couple times a week. And so if I am part of the chemtrail conspiracy and I am out there spraying poisons over America, then that kind of means that when I'm not flying, I'm being subjected to the same poison that's being done by Jim, who's also in on this whole thing. And the number of people that get involved with this becomes exponential. It becomes just larger and larger and larger. And until finally you say, okay, at what point does that become a more reasonable explanation than the actual explanation, or at least the explanation that I'm going to give you? And the explanation that I'm going to give you is this. If you are old enough to remember, I remember clear as day, I remember where I was. I was in the parking lot at the Museum of Science and Space Transit Planetarium. I was standing there with my friend and dear friend and mentor and older brother, Phil Trick. And we were standing there outside of the planetarium, and it must have been around 1973 or 74, somewhere around there. It was the daytime. And we heard a sound that we'd never heard before. And we looked up and we saw a 747, which was pretty new. I want to say the first one flew in the 1970, right around then. And we heard a sound that was kind of a different. The jet sounds that we'd heard before were these high-pitched kind of sound of ripping paper. And this was more of a what the hell is this? We look up and we see this 747, and Phil said, those are the new engines. Those are the new high bypass engines. I said, oh, wow. They are a lot quieter. And so to understand the explanation that basically is why no pilots believe in the chemtrail thing is pretty simple. The first generation of jet engines were a tube, and the tube sucked air in, compressed it, and then injected fuel into it and shot it out the back. And in order to make an engine powerful enough to lift ever bigger airplanes, you had to make that tube bigger and bigger and bigger and louder and louder and louder, and it was not very fuel efficient and all the rest of it. So this is called a low bypass engine or a pass-through engine. It's called a pure turbojet engine. There's a turbine on the front. The air goes through the engine, comes out the back hotter than it went in, and that thrust drives a turbine that runs the compressor turbine on the front, and that reactive thrust pushes the engine forward, and that's how it goes. And that's what all jet engines were. That's what they were on the 707. That's what they were on the DC-8, the DC-9. The 727s had them, and the early 737s have them. If you look at a picture of a 737, look up just Google search for 737-200 or something like that, and you'll see that the first 737s, real short, had tiny little engines that were bolted right on underneath the wings. Because they were the original class of pure turbojet engines. When it came time to make the 747, they realized that they cannot continue to make these things bigger and bigger and bigger forever. And besides, there was a better way to do it. What they found was that if that intake turbine, the thing that sucks in the air and compresses it, if you were to make that bigger than the opening of the engine, bigger, like that, and spun it around, that the turbine is actually more effective than a propeller is. And what they found was, okay, let's think this through now. If we have a turbine in the front and we make it bigger than the opening is this big, now the turbine is this big, then we're pushing enough thrust through the engine to drive the engine. And we're not only just getting thrust out the back, we're getting the mechanical power to turn that turbine, and that becomes a propeller. And instead of a propeller, it's a fan. It's a giant fan. So now we have not a turbojet engine, we have a turbofan engine. And it's also called a high bypass engine because most of the air that the modern jet engines use do not go through the jet itself. They go around the outside. That's why if you look at you look at an old jet engine on the back of a 727, the thing with the 3 engines on the tail, look at the back of a 727, engines on the side, you'll see that they are smooth like torpedoes. But if you look at the modern engines, you'll see that the front of the engine is much bigger than the rear of the engine. And that's because the front of the engine is built wide enough to allow this turbine to produce thrust without that air going through the engine. And this was tremendous for a number of reasons. Number one, it allowed you to get more power. Number two, it allowed you to exponentially grow the size of the fan without exponentially growing the size of the core. It was more fuel efficient because you're not just burning fuel, you're using that mechanical spinning energy, that horsepower, to drive a propeller, basically, a propeller with, 30, 40 blades. Every time you look at a jet engine at the airport, you see it before you get on the plane. Essentially, that's a propeller. And it's driven by the small amount of air that goes through the jet engine. And the reason there's confusion is the big turbine looks an awful lot like the smaller turbines, but it's not going through the engine. And it's quieter. And it's more fuel efficient. So awesome, fantastic, that's great. Over time, the high bypass engine had so many advantages: fuel efficiency, much quieter, more thrust, that every single design after the generation of 737, as far as I know, is the only example of an aircraft that started out with one and ended up with the other. 737 is the most successful aircraft in the history of the world by far. You cannot get high bypass engines on a 727. That's why you never see them anymore. It's just a shame because I always loved that airplane. You can't get them on there. So the old 707s had the little narrow engine nacelles, and the Air Force tanker version of that, the KC-135, originally had those narrow nacelles. But since they're on pylons, they are re-engining 707s, so now they've got the bigger engines. Anyway, all of this to say this for what? What's the point? Well, the point is this. In the olden days, contrails looked like they did because the only thing that was going through that engine was the stuff going through the narrow tube. That hot gas would come out of the back, and ice crystals up there would form, and it would condense, and it would leave a nice thin contrail like the contrails used to be. But once the high bypass engines came out, the column of air is enormously wider. Little old engines would put that much air through at higher speed. Bigger, newer engines put more air through at a lower speed. So the volume of air that gets heated by the jet engine is orders of magnitude bigger than it used to be. And that's why jet contrails look so much thicker and heavier than they used to. And that's why when I look at people who are talking about the chemtrail theory, you'll see this again and again and again. It's almost like a meme. This is a contrail, this is a chemtrail. To which I reply, this is a contrail from a turbo jet engine, and this is a contrail from a turbo fan engine. And isn't that a better explanation? I mean, that explanation doesn't require anything. It doesn't require conspiracies. It doesn't require enforcement. It doesn't require people who are in on it. It doesn't require people poisoning their own kids. It doesn't require anything. It's just a better design that leaves a different signature in the sky. And by the way, if it turns out that chemtrails are real, then why don't we see them all the time? In other words, if this is something that needs to be done and they're willing to do it in broad daylight, why aren't there chemtrails up there all the time? The reason I'm saying you don't see them all the time is because the atmospheric conditions necessary for a contrail are relatively specific. You have to have a certain temperature, you have to be at a certain altitude and air pressure and all the rest of it. So the reason that you only see them on certain days is there are days when at jet airline altitudes, which generally between 28,000 and 38,000 feet, 37,000, that's about right for domestic flights. There are some days where at that temperature and at that altitude, ice crystals are abundant and they make very thick contrails. And other times, the conditions are not there, and so you don't see them. But if they were generating chemical trails on purpose, you would see them every day, and you don't. You only see them on days when contrails are easy to be made. And what's even more interesting than that, and fighter pilots understand this better than most commercial pilots, because most commercial pilots don't get to see out the back so much, don't fly in formation, and they don't get to change altitude as quickly. But you will clearly see, and it's modeled really well in flight simulators, by the way. If you take a commercial jetliner like a 737 and you just start your cruise climb, you're climbing 1,000 feet per minute, you're heading towards your destination, getting higher and higher and higher, air's getting thinner, your speed's increasing, ground speed's increasing, your fuel flow's decreasing, all these wonderful things. And what'll happen is as you get to a certain altitude, all of a sudden that engine will start producing contrails, and it will produce contrails at that altitude for a certain physical piece of sky. And when you descend again, or occasionally if you go higher, but that doesn't usually happen, when you descend again, you come out of the altitude where that ice crystal formation happens, and then the contrails just stop. And this happens naturally all the time, and everything you see out there is consistent with this theory, and none of it is consistent with the idea that people are turning on chemicals to poison Americans. I don't blame people, especially today, who say that the government would be capable of things like this, because I've seen the government and the FBI do things in the last year or two that I simply cannot believe are real. Still can't believe is real. So I'm not blaming you for your skepticism on that, but chemtrails are not a real thing. They just aren't. And if you think about the number of people involved with looking at the back of a jet engine, including the flight crew, every single leg of the flight, one of those two guys gets out and walks around the airplane. Everybody, the ground workers, the people who have to load the chemicals, people have to manufacture the chemicals, people have to move the chemicals in trucks from the poison facility to the airport, and people have to put them into the airplanes, and all of it. If there was no other explanation, you'd have at least some reason. But when the explanation is so obvious and so clear and so rational and so historical and all the rest of it, if that's not enough for you, I can't help you. Now people have been saying, oh, well, do aliens, do JFK. I'd be happy to do all of them. But I'm not going to do them all tonight. So, yeah, I'd love to do JFK. This is one of the only areas that I'm aware of where I just disagree with Burt Rutan, and we've never really had the conversation, but we should. Burt's convinced that there was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK, and I'm convinced that there wasn't. I'm convinced that the existing explanation is perfectly suitable, and Burt's convinced that it's not. And that make an interesting conversation, because I love and respect that man, and he feels the same way about me. So next time we're together, we'll hash it out, and I guarantee you that two opinions will go into that room, and one opinion will come out, either mine or his, I don't know whose, but one will come out. That's what reasonable people can do when they respect each other. How much rifle shooting have you ever done, Bill? Well, I've been to the Texas School Book Depository, and I have looked at that shot, and I don't find anything particularly amazing about that shot. And by the way, and I'm not going to get into this whole thing now, I'm just not, but I will say this. When you hear people analyzing the actual shot, and you're saying, what's the chance that you could hit him right in the back of the head here or whatever? And it's like, no, that's not fair. That's not fair. Oswald didn't have to hit him here. That's where Oswald did hit him. Oswald just shot at him. He just had to hit him at all, period. And all of this thing, like there are certain evidence that are deal killers, right? That are deal killers. If the magic bullet could not be explained, then that would be the end of the Oswald theory. But the magic bullet is easily explained by very, very, very simple things. And if your best piece of evidence can be defeated easily, then you got a problem. I believed in the Kennedy assassination conspiracy for 20 years of my life. And then I read, as somebody pointed out here, I read Case Closed by Gerald Posner. And after that, there's just nothing. There's nothing stands against that. I'm sorry. I think it's absolutely airtight. But anyway, we'll see. I'll take this last question because it's a new viewer, and we're always happy and very grateful for it. From I don't know if you're a new viewer. It's the first time I've seen the name. Was it Exal Fury TV? I'm sorry if I mispronounced that wrong. My apologies if you've answered this already, but what do you think the chances of Trump actually correctly getting reelected? What do you think the fraud stands, and if the fraud stands and Biden gets in? I have no idea what to do if I have some ideas. I have plenty of ideas what to do if the fraud stands and Biden gets in, but that's a story for next week or next month. I thought that Trump's chances, prior to the Texas case, I had been disappointed by what I had seen from Trump's legal team and the results they were getting. And I was disappointed with them because they were dealing with it on a state-by-state basis where the legislature, or at least key elements of the state governments, including the governors, had to be corrupt in order for this to happen in the first place. And that's, to me, like trying to go in and get a conviction among the criminals' friends and family. But the Texas thing made an entirely different argument. And because Texas was saying, hey, we're not talking about irregularities in our system. We think we did a pretty good job. But it's not just a Pennsylvania issue. And it's not just a Georgia issue. It's a national issue because we all have to live with this president. And so when Texas stepped up and did that, I thought the genius of this is twofold. Number one, they get to take the best evidence from around the country now because it's not a state issue. And secondly, they're theoretically at least appealing to a court that is not part of the problem in the first place. You're not dealing with the Georgia Secretary of State anymore, who clearly is in on this if this actually happened, and I believe it did. So we'll know soon enough. But when Texas said this, when Texas brought a state into it and it became a federal issue, not a state issue. No, this is not about Georgia dealing with Georgia irregularities. We're talking about enough irregularities so that the entire election is called into doubt. That was huge. And when the rest of the states added to that, that was enormous. And now you've got, 29 states for and 20 against or something? Okay. Tell you a pretty good idea of where to look for Chinese money if it were me, but in any event, that's a different story. Now I don't see how the Supreme Court cannot deal with this. I suspect they didn't want to. I know Roberts didn't want to, but I don't see how you get away from this. So this is why the left fought so aggressively against Trump's 3 Supreme Court nominees, especially the last one. Well, they tried to assassinate, character assassinate. Doing this for too long. There's space right in front of me. I'm not going to check the comments. I'm just going to get this right. Of course, it's Kavanaugh. Because they thought they'd have the court. And then all of a sudden, they didn't. And that complicated things. But if you're setting people up for, think about it. I heard people saying this is exactly what Trump would have done if Trump was trying to pull off a coup. But if you were really going to try and steal the election, what would you do? You would say, first of all, Trump is going to fight it and he's not going to want to leave office. Well, you wouldn't want to leave office if you've had the election stolen. So that's prepping the battlefield. We're going to put out polls that say Biden's going to win by 9,000 points. Well, it was closer than we thought, but Biden won. So it must be an accurate election because Biden was supposed to win this thing by a huge number and it was actually closer. You would talk about you would start the red mirage storyline. If Donald Trump, if election night comes to a close and you go to bed and Donald Trump is ahead Don't believe that that means he won, because there are still so many Democratic votes left to count. Turns out that they're not real votes, but nevertheless, that whole thing was put in place. And if you look at everything that happened prior to this election, including the fact that Biden didn't campaign and neither did Harris, and neither one of them seemed terribly upset about the fact that nobody would come and see them. If you look at all of that together, that's one thing, and then you get into other things like no president has ever not failed to be reelected if he got more votes than he did the first time. Barack Obama got 3 million fewer votes in 2012 than he did in 2008, and he was still reelected. Trump's approval numbers were not in the numbers that would have gotten him thrown out of office. And any number of other historical things that would have to be clearly, for the first time in history, this happened. And it's got nothing to do with the vote fraud. It's like all of these other indicators that have happened every single time, every single election, then none of these things happened this time, and that's just because coincidence. And Joe Biden turned out more black votes than Barack Obama did. That's probably the single greatest piece of evidence you need to know. And anyway, yes, as I pointed out, I actually didn't, it's funny, Mr. Tomes points out that Hillary admitted to felony destruction of data and so on, and nothing happened to her. The "you must be crazy" firewall that I just did, I not only wrote it, but I recorded a section on Luis Lerner saying that, no, we don't have those emails proving that we selected against conservatives because our hard drive failed. Really? What about the backup? Yeah, the backup failed too. What about the fact that it's on 1,000 computers throughout the IRS network? All of those computers failed as well. What about their backups? Yeah, it's a strange coincidence. But all of the backups failed as well. I listed that data point. I listed the data point about Hillary Clinton breaking federal statutes that say nothing about classification. Say if you try to obscure, if you don't turn in, or if you try to alter, destroy, or don't turn in any files, that's a felony. Nope. I was going to put James Comey listing all the things she did. She walked. And then there's the small business of the fact that the only guy who really had anything that could actually put the Clintons away, which is pedophilia, underage sex with minors, the only thing that would ever really stick to them, because you've already accused them. I already know it. They've sold out the country. They made these incredible deals. They do anything for money. But the only guy who had any real, genuine evidence that they had committed the kind of crimes that you could not get away with in this current environment, the ones that brought down Harvey Weinstein. If you had that evidence and you didn't want to spend the rest of your life in prison, and you had that evidence, then that guy'd have to be killed. Now, that only happens in movies, of course. You never really find witnesses with that kind of thing actually kill themselves in their cells. It just never happens. Except it happened this time, and it happened in front of all of our eyes. And when people said, well, what happened to the 24-hour security cameras that were on Jeffrey Epstein's cell because he was a suicide risk, the response was, oh, the cameras just shorted out. Are they shorted out now? No, they're working again. So how long did they go dark? 16 minutes, somewhere in there. During the 16 minutes that Epstein hanged himself, you're telling me that the video cameras just stopped working. Yep, that's what we're saying. And we all took it. We took it. Everybody knows. It's a meme going around the world. Epstein didn't kill himself. Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. The evidence that he didn't kill himself is the fact that the excuse is so pathetic that the only thing worse than that pathetic excuse would have been if he testified. The only thing worse than saying, well, the camera just didn't work, is actually seeing the video of somebody going there and murdering him. And they think we'll take anything. And they're right. We will. We'll take anything. We'll put up with anything. We should have had the Clintons in prison the second that happened. And I still to this day do not know why Donald Trump could have been in office for the length of time he was and not launched a full-scale criminal investigation into what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm fighting real hard for Donald Trump, and I have been, and many of you, virtually all of you watching this, feel the same way. But at some point, you've got to ask Donald Trump to accept responsibility for a lot of this, and responsibility for things like, why was this not investigated? Why? why did we've come so far? We've fallen so far in our belief in not only in truth but in law that the entire country knows that he was murdered, and they know that he was murdered by the Clintons, which I never believed in my life. Oh, Vince Foster killed himself. Oh, come on, really? Hillary Clinton is going to have somebody murdered? That just doesn't really, no. And they started making the statistical argument, and I thought, well, that's a better argument. And now it's like, now it happens in front of your eyes. And what did we do? We did nothing. We did nothing. You know why we did nothing? We did nothing because the power of social proof. Because these bastards understand psychology and they have us dialed exactly in. Social proof. The reason we didn't do anything was because nobody else did anything either. This is why Jeffrey Epstein could be murdered in front of everybody's eyes, and everybody knew it, and everybody knew why. And the reason that they didn't go to jail, and the reason why we put up with it and we continued to go on with our lives, is because since nobody's doing anything about it, we're not going to do anything about it either. They know that we know. They just also know that we won't do anything. And that's why they thought they'd get away with stealing this election. Whether they actually crossed a line is still, the vote's still out on that one. I think they did. But when people say, well, what makes you think they could get away with a crime like that, like the election fraud? The only response for that is, what makes you think that they wouldn't think they could get away with that? They got away with Al Franken. Hillary got away with hundreds, if not thousands, of cases of federal law violations in front of everybody and admitted it. They killed Jeffrey Epstein in front of the entire country and nothing happened. Why wouldn't they think they could get away with it? It got away with everything else. And we thought, well, we're going to go and buy another AR-15. I'm going to ammo up. That's great, but you don't get to save the country on the shooting range. They knew that we would take it, and all of these things have been things that have just incrementally. They so much of this COVID-19 stuff happened because nobody did a damn thing when Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in front of everybody. Why do you think that they put all these draconian things in place? Because we took it. And why do you think they continued it after we flattened the curve? Remember, 15 days to flatten the curve? Well, they had our goodwill and the honesty of the American people, and they said, okay, well, this is serious, let's do it. So we did 15 days to flatten the curve, and we did everything they told us to, and then they realized, wait a minute, they're doing everything that we tell them to. Yeah. Let's see what else we can do. Let's see how long they'll take it. Turns out, we'll take it forever. We'll take it forever. We'll keep taking it. We're never going to stop. We're going to continue to complain, to bitch and moan and piss and wheel about it, but we're never going to do a damn thing about it. And they know it. They have us. They absolutely have us. And now the only question is, did this election fraud cross a psychological trigger point for conservatives? And I suspect that it did. I suspect that it did. I hope that it did. I suspect and I hope that conservatives and the country didn't do anything about Jeffrey Epstein, even though we knew that the Clintons had them killed, was because Jeffrey Epstein was a bad guy. He was a friend of the Clintons, and he kind of had it coming to him. That's why. And I hope and I suspect that this has not only outraged Americans, I think it has shocked me to the core. How much corruption there is, how much corruption we took, how willing we were to put up with corruption. We knew they were going to cheat. We just thought we could outvote the cheating. Why did we ever agree to an election where we knew there was going to be voter fraud? Why did we ever agree to it? Why? Because we're comfortable. We're comfortable. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see before the next Stratosphere Lounge, and then we will also see what happens after that. But I'll tell you one thing. if Joe Biden is, if Joe Biden goes through the inaugural ceremony, I am released from my side of the social contract. And I can't be the only person who feels that. If this happens, I agree to be governed, and in exchange for obeying the law and paying taxes, I get to determine who's going to be making the laws, and they have to follow the same laws. Those are the two conditions that I agreed to. And if one or both of those conditions are going to be revoked by the other party, not by my party, but by their party, if my ability to determine who is in power and the people that we send in power have to obey the same laws that the rest of us do, if one or both of those conditions are removed by the other side, then my obligation is no longer enforced or enforceable, or even not. It's not only do I not have a moral obligation anymore, I have a moral obligation to overthrow that government. And I won't say by any means necessary, because I don't mean by any means necessary. If I could restore, if Joe Biden is inaugurated president, and it turned out that I could restore the rule of law to America and restore Donald Trump to the office, and all I had to do was murder 10,000 innocent civilians and everything would be fine again, I wouldn't do it. So I won't do it by any means necessary, but I will do it to the best of my ability, and trying to retain my humanity and honesty and compassion and all the rest. But if they do it, if that actually happens, and we'll know soon enough, then we not only do not have an obligation to obey this government, we have an obligation to overthrow it. Overthrow it, not resist it, not complain about it, not overthrow it. No, it's not legitimate. It's not legitimate. You want to have a fair election? Let's have a fair election. Of a paper ballot election, and if Joe Biden wins that election, then he's president. Then I'll agree with you. But otherwise, no. And I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to. No. If they do this, then I am going to take this channel, this business, and everything else, and I am going to continue to call for this illegal government to be overthrown through legal means. I'm not talking about sedition. I'm not talking about violence. I am saying that we will stop this one way or another, and if it means things like, I'm not going to mention any names, but I've heard directly, if it means things like, I don't know, truckers refusing to deliver everything, or it means things like people just, if 100 million people decide, no, we're not paying taxes to support the crime, we're not going to pay these people to steal our republic from us and then pay them to give them the money to steal it again. No, whatever. Nope. We're gonna do something serious, or we're not. Maybe we'll just go along with it. I didn't think we'd go along with what we've gone along with so far, but maybe we will. I don't know. I know how I feel. And all I need is constitutional authority. That's all I need. If Donald Trump is reelected by the electors due to constitutional means, that's all I need. I'll fight him to the death on that. But if there's no legal standing for it, then I can't. There has to be legal standing for it. And the mechanism is there. And everybody knows what it is by now. So that's that. And we will know by next Thursday, and we will be back here next Thursday. We'll have a lot more news by then. And I'll say this again. I said it 3 weeks before the election, 3 weeks before the election. A lot of people got on my case about, oh, you're being a defeatist. I can't believe you've given up. I haven't given up. I'm just saying things can go one way or another. So I'm just going to say this again. They can steal the government And maybe they'll get away with it, but they cannot steal the country. And you need to understand that difference. The country lives inside us. The country is an idea that lives inside Americans. And they cannot steal that from us. All we can do is give it up. All we can do is just concede it. And they can never take that away from people that won't concede it. And I am not conceding it. Ever. So, there you go. Let's hope it, in the immortal words of that great philosopher, Corporal Hicks, if it comes to that, I'll do us both. Let's just make sure it doesn't come to that. All right. Okay, gang. Good seeing you. Thank you again. Wish you had better news, but, could be worse. We could just be unaware of it, or we could just be resigned to it, but we're neither of those things, so. Time for us to earn our citizenship, I suspect, one way or another. All right, guys. Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who continue to support this work and all of this, and not just through financial means, although those are very important. And if you haven't contributed, we really could use your help right now. But the emotional support and the intellectual support, all of that stuff, inexpressible gratitude for all of that. I'm speaking for everybody here in our tiny little family, Scott and Shelley and Mark and Steve and all the rest of it. I think it's 4 or 5 of us. In any event, thank you very much for allowing us to continue our lives here. We really do appreciate it. We're very grateful for it every day. That'll do it for this week. Maybe I'll have some groovy animations by next week. But I'll tell you one thing. This is just my personal policy, and you can take it or leave it. But if a black helicopter should appear outside your back door, don't get in it. That's my advice for you at this time. All right. That'll do it. Thanks. Thanks for the support. Well, we'll see you right here next week on Stratosphere Lounge. And I have a feeling that next week is not going to be a science fiction show or a movie show. I suspect next week we're going to be talking about issues of genuine import one way or another. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.